For years, I doubted that our history could be so deeply manipulated. But once you start noticing the clues, massive footprints in stone, enormous buildings, melted structures, and lost accounts of ancient catastrophes, everything starts to unravel. Across the world, Old World architecture hints at a time when taller, stronger humans may have walked the earth, building on a scale we can barely replicate today. Official records stay silent, old texts are gone, and what's left has been buried, under mud, dust, and misleading stories. But the evidence is still there, if you know where to look. This is the story of giants, resets, and the civilization we may have inherited without even realizing it. The puzzle of ancient resets. Over the centuries, destructive events, or resets, have shaken civilizations all around the world. Fires, floods, earthquakes, and wars have wiped out countless records and buildings, leaving huge gaps in our knowledge. Because so much evidence has been lost or hidden, anyone who wants to understand our true past must dig through fragments of documents, examine strange architectural details, and compare unexplained stories that have come down to us from different cultures. One of the most eye-catching pieces of evidence comes from footprints embedded in rocks. These footprints appear so large that they could only have been made by a human far taller than the average person today. They appear in rock that was softened by extreme heat, then rehardened. Their preserved clarity suggests they were made more recently, during a time when such beings could have existed, and are not ancient natural anomalies as mainstream science often claims. Example: the Temple of Ain Dara. Enormous footprints are carved or impressed at its entrance, suggesting that visitors, or the site's original creators, were giants. These footprints are not random. They are positioned in a way that implies a large figure once walked there. While some giants might have been extraordinarily tall, over 14 feet, research shows that most giants could have measured around 7 to 9 feet tall, still noticeably larger than the current human average. Old World architecture that defies logic. Across continents, Europe, Asia, North Africa, the Middle East, and the Americas, there are buildings featuring domes, columns, arches, and intricate stone or brickwork. Some are officially dated to ancient times. Others, like those in Europe and America, are claimed to have been built between the 18th and early 20th centuries, by ordinary humans using primitive tools. But when you look at them with fresh eyes, a number of puzzling questions arise. Why create such enormous entryways if the people constructing them were mostly around 5 to 6 feet tall? Time and again, we see doors so large that an even smaller door has been fitted inside the main one, almost like an afterthought so that we small humans can come and go. If these huge doors were truly designed for people of our size, why then create smaller doors inside the large door? In fact, we're not even seeing the full extent of these buildings. Entire lower sections have been buried, and what we often see as doorways were once windows or arches. In some cases, only the uppermost portions of these structures remain visible. Many have been partially submerged under layers of mud, a phenomenon known as mud flooding, which has significantly altered these Old World buildings. A look at St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. Notice how small the people appear next to the massive architecture. But take a closer look. Those aren't the original doors. The entryways have been visibly altered, with the true, much larger doors buried beneath the ground. The steps leading up to the current entrances weren't part of the original design. They were added later, likely after a mud flood raised the surrounding ground level, leaving only the upper portions of the structure accessible. We'll explore the topic of mud floods in more detail later in this video. Stepping inside an old cathedral, palace, or state capitol building, you often find ceilings soaring dozens of feet overhead. The columns supporting these high vaults are equally impressive, indicating an intention to create massive interior spaces. If the builders were the smaller humans of past centuries, working with simpler machines, how did they raise, transport, and fit such heavy stone blocks? Some columns weigh tons and require advanced lifting equipment, which we're told didn't exist in the horse and cart era. Interior decorations. Many of these vaulted halls and domed chambers feature detailed carvings at heights that would have been hard to reach without modern scaffolding and cranes. Stained glass windows. Gigantic, ornately designed windows are another hallmark of these buildings, again pointing to architectural ambitions that go beyond what we typically associate with that period. Lack of construction records. For feats of engineering this vast, you would expect countless archives of blueprints, workshop diaries, official writings, and photos capturing each stage of construction. Yet these documents are conspicuously missing. or if they do exist, they are vague and do not align with the grand scale of the buildings. Photographs purporting to show these structures under construction often reveal only slight additions or modifications, not the raising of colossal walls or columns from scratch. Even worse, some of the images that do circulate appear to be manipulated. A few are obvious composites, fakes, or pulled from unrelated construction projects entirely, passed off as proof. Many supposed construction records are merely artistic sketches or engravings, not actual photographic or detailed engineering documentation. Sparse written accounts. Historical texts sometimes credit a single architect or patron with building multiple massive monuments in impossibly short time frames, with no mention of how the tasks were practically achieved. Missing industrial traces. Quarrying, hauling, and shaping thousands of heavy stone blocks would have required a monumental workforce and sizable industries behind them, yet there is no clear paper trail. Uniform style across the globe. The architectural styles we label as Baroque, Renaissance, Gothic, or Greco-Roman are not exclusive to Europe. These massive, intricate buildings, featuring domes, arches, and towering columns, are found worldwide. Even regions with their own distinct architectural traditions, such as pagodas in Asia or grand mosques in the Middle East, still display similar structural elements that resemble those seen in Europe and America. While mainstream history attributes these similarities to cultural exchange or colonial influence, the sheer scale, uniformity, and widespread presence of these structures suggest a far more complex architectural heritage, one that may have been inherited rather than independently developed in each region. And there's another curious pattern. Why do some of these buildings serve as government institutions, others as religious temples, and others as museums or exhibition halls? Yet all share the same architectural blueprint. How can buildings with such vastly different purposes look so eerily alike? The case of U.S. state capitol buildings provides a striking example of the architectural mysteries surrounding Old World structures. These monumental domed buildings, featuring massive stone columns and intricate facades, were allegedly built between the mid-1800s and early 1900s, a time when horse-drawn carriages were still common and large-scale industrial construction equipment was extremely limited. Many of these structures were reportedly completed in under 10 years, an astonishing feat given their size and complexity. Even with modern technology, replicating such intricate stonework and grand domes would be a major challenge. Partially buried floors. Many state capitol buildings have lower levels that are now underground, with entrances and windows sitting at ground level or even below it. These were not originally basements, but were once fully accessible floors before being buried under layers of mud and sediment. Multiple mud floods, which reshaped entire cities, are responsible for this phenomenon, leaving only the upper portions of these grand structures visible today. Inconsistent records. Official narratives credit architects and builders, but the expected volume of construction photographs, blueprints, and detailed work logs is mysteriously absent. Instead, we mostly see posed images of the final buildings or renovation work, but almost no evidence of their original assembly. Moving and assembling these massive stone blocks, some weighing 20 to 80 tons, along with intricate sculptures and towering domes, should have left behind mountains of paperwork, blueprints, engineering diagrams, day-to-day documentation, progress photos, and workforce records. Instead, we get a few scattered documents, vague descriptions, and the occasional sketch, as if these colossal buildings just appeared with minimal planning. How did a country supposedly, in its early industrial stages, suddenly build so many elaborate government buildings, cathedrals, and grand halls in a style that rivaled ancient Rome, only to abandon that level of craftsmanship and never build in that same style again? Instead of preserving these architectural marvels, they were quietly demolished, erased from sight, with only a few photographs surviving and official explanations that border on absurd. The mud floods. Many buildings that show giant architectural features also have sunken lower levels or half-buried entrances. Researchers have pointed out that this isn't just an isolated case. It's a recurring pattern seen across different countries and time periods. Floors that were once at street level now sit well below it. Entrances have turned into basements. Windows have become doors. Rather than a single, global cataclysm, the evidence suggests a series of regional events, what some call mud floods, that occurred in different centuries, across different parts of the world. These events appear to have altered the landscape, raised ground levels, and buried the original first floors of many grand buildings. Clues to these events are scattered throughout history. Buildings from the same architectural period in various countries share the trait of having buried floors. Historical photos sometimes show ground levels that were clearly lower than what we see today. In some cases, even entire streets or lower city layers have been unearthed beneath modern urban layouts. These weren't basements when they were built. They were the main floors. What we see today as street-level entrances were often originally second or even third-story windows or arches, repurposed by later generations after the true ground level was lost under layers of mud. Giants and their wide-ranging influence. Ancient accounts from cultures around the world describe powerful giants who shaped civilization. In Sumerian texts, the hero Gilgamesh was said to be part god and stood well above normal human height. Egyptian legends speak of master builders of large stature who raised the pyramids. Norse myths mention Odin, Thor, and Loki, all having giant lineage, and portray them as guardians or bringers of knowledge. Many of these sources suggest giants were not only physically tall, but also possessed advanced knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and possibly other forms of energy. In Europe, Britain and Ireland have their own rich tales of giants who built dolmens, stone table-like structures, megalithic circles, and castles. Local folklore talks about giant kings, giant builders, and giant guardians of certain hills or fortresses. Medieval texts mention skeletons that once measured well over 7 feet in length, sometimes 8 or 9 feet, discovered in the foundations of old churches, castles, or buried under ancient mounds. Many stone circles, such as Stonehenge, were referred to as the Giant's Dance in older writings. Dolmens and quoits in Cornwall and Ireland carry names like Giant's Quoit or the Giant's Table, suggesting knowledge that taller beings created them. Folklore says some of these stones were moved magically by giants who knew how to manipulate earth energies and harness certain vibrations. According to many legends, giants were not just large in body but also knowledgeable about aligning buildings with Earth's natural power. Whether we call it earth energy, chi, prana, or vril, there is a recurring theme of giants building structures along special lines or nodes where energy is strong. These buildings often incorporate large amounts of quartz or granite, both of which can carry electric and vibrational properties. Why this matters? If these old-world buildings were designed to harness beneficial energy, such as chi, prana, or vril, then their true function may have been healing and rejuvenation. Many of the structures we now call cathedrals or places of worship may not have been built for religious ceremonies at all. They may have originally served as energetic centers, designed to restore the body and bring balance through sound and resonance. Hidden or suppressed evidence. Some of the most well-known images of giant skeletons circulating online are, in fact, fake. Many of them traced back to a Photoshop contest from 2002. These viral images have been a major distraction, allowing skeptics to dismiss the entire topic as internet myth. But while those visuals were fabricated, they've unfortunately overshadowed real discoveries, documented in old newspapers, local testimonies, and books, of oversized skeletons found across North America, Europe, and beyond. Old newspaper clippings and local histories frequently mention giant skeletons, some reaching heights of 7, 8, or even 9 feet. Yet these remains often disappear, especially once institutions like the Smithsonian become involved. Similar reports come from Romania, where excavators claim that authorities quickly removed oversized bones, never to be displayed publicly. Why the secrecy? The moment people begin to realize that giants once walked the earth, the entire official story of human development begins to fall apart. Architecture, energy, history, it all has to be reevaluated. And those who benefit from the current system have every reason to keep things buried. Cauldrons. In Britain and elsewhere, ancient accounts speak of giants with so-called magical cauldrons, but these were likely not simple cooking pots. Based on their design and materials, they may have functioned more like oversized singing bowls, capable of focusing and amplifying sound vibrations. Rather than being purely symbolic, these metal vessels, especially when used in energy-rich locations, could have served practical purposes, restoring vitality, supporting cellular healing, and interacting with the body's natural electric field. Given that giants also built cathedrals and other acoustically resonant stone structures, it's clear they understood how to harness subtle forces, electric, magnetic, or both, for physical and energetic benefit. Famous giant figures in the British Isles. Tom Hickathrift and King Arthur, Though lauded as slayers of monsters, both are sometimes described in folklore as towering, possibly giant themselves. People 7 to 9 feet tall may not have considered themselves giants, yet they distinguish themselves from the even taller true giants, reaching 14 feet or more. Queen Boudica. Chroniclers described her as tall, imposing, and forceful, leading massive uprisings in ancient Britain. Merlin. Rumored in some accounts to be the offspring of a giant and a witch, Merlin's depictions often place him head and shoulders above ordinary men, hinting at an inherited giant stature. Druid giants. Several giant figures are said to be druids, masters of natural forces and mystical rites. Tuatha De Danann. Irish lore describes them as tall, fair-haired, and exceptionally skilled in megalithic construction, strongly suggesting they were what we would call giants. The exceptionally tall Tuatha De Danann were said to have arrived from 4 lost island cities in the Atlantic, which were Murius, Phalius, Gorius, and Findius. The first recension of Labor Gabala Eren, the Book of Invasions, describes the Tuatha De Danann as having resided in the northern islands of the world, where they were instructed in the magic arts, before finally arriving in Ireland. They brought with them advanced weapons, technology, and megalithic construction expertise. The giants of Stonehenge and ancient Britain, Newman and Vera. Medieval church traditions and older texts also hint at exceptionally tall saints, bishops, and rulers, some credited with heights of 8, 9, or even 12 feet. St. Christopher. Early accounts suggest he stood anywhere between 12 and 18 feet. He was once widely venerated as a giant martyr. Pope Calixtus I and St. Modoald. Contemporary artwork depicts them towering above those around them. The Mass of St. Gregory, 16th century. This painting depicts Pope Gregory I, also known as Gregory the Great, during a miraculous vision at the altar. He served as Bishop of Rome from 590 to 604. Notice the striking size and stature of the 3 main priests, massive figures with broad frames and notable physical robustness. Charlemagne, Charles the Great. Official records claim he measured around 8 feet in height, implying that Europe's most powerful leaders may have themselves been giants, or at least extremely tall. Some might look at the smaller figures in this 15th century image surrounded by Anglo-Saxons and assume they're children. But were children ever tonsured, with the tops of their heads shaved? The shaved crown of the head was a mark of ordained adult clergy, not something typically done to young boys. More likely, these are fully grown adult priests, simply smaller in stature. If we compare their size to the towering figure of Charlemagne at the center, holding the fleur-de-lis staff, it becomes evident that the surrounding Anglo-Saxons range around 8.5 feet tall. This mirrors what we see in the 16th century painting The Mass of St. Gregory, where smaller adult priests, clearly identifiable by their facial features and shaved crowns, stand alongside much larger ones. Once again, the size difference isn't about age, it's about 2 distinct types of humans, one robust and giant-like, the other smaller and more familiar to us today. Giants of America. Evidence points to the existence of tall, fair-skinned, or red-haired giants across North America, often associated with copper artifacts and advanced building methods. The Smithsonian and other institutions have repeatedly intervened in discoveries of oversized skeletons, leading to numerous lost collections. Giants often wore copper bracelets, helmets, or headbands, metals known to be excellent conductors of electricity. This might show they understood how copper interacts with the body's natural energy fields. Red-haired and blonde giants. In the newspaper reports about the Catalina Island skeletons, you can see one report describes the remains as Indians, while another clearly states they were blonde and white. Based on patterns seen across many discoveries, if a skeleton lacks preserved hair, as most do, it's labeled as Native American by default. But in cases where hair is preserved and turns out to be blonde or red, that detail occasionally makes it into the report. Still, in most of these cases, the bones and associated artifacts are quickly handed over to the Smithsonian or similar institutions, after which they vanish, without further study, genetic testing, or public access. Lovelock Cave. Giants discovered with red hair, strong bones, and advanced weaving skills. Many remains have quietly disappeared from public view. What is significant to note is that the scientific community has assiduously scrubbed all references to the 6 to 8 foot tall, red-haired skeletons found at the site Lovelock Cave. As will be seen, this repeated effort to clear the historical record of all references to a pre-Indian Caucasian culture in the United States can be seen as working in harmony with the Nag-Pra policies of the federal government, which works on agendas based on political correctness and not objective science. The ancient giants who ruled America, Richard J. Dewhurst. It's also worth noting that across many Native American tribes, ancient oral traditions speak of a race of tall, powerful beings, often described as white or red-haired giants who once roamed the continent. Said to have lived in caves, used advanced tools, and possessed immense strength, these giants echo the very traits seen in the buried skeletons and copper artifacts that have quietly disappeared from the official record. In Florida, well-preserved bog mummies, not giants, but smaller humans ranging from 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 8 inches, tested positive for haplogroup X DNA, a genetic lineage linked to Northern Europe, reinforcing the idea that white populations existed in the Americas long before official history claims Europeans arrived. Giants in Renaissance and medieval artwork. Renaissance and medieval artworks often show people, rulers, warriors, or mythic heroes, with markedly robust builds and strikingly muscular physiques. Children in these images appear similarly sturdy. Far from artistic license, this could reflect a once common reality of taller, stronger humans who shaped society before a series of catastrophic events or targeted exterminations led to their decline. Classical figures like Mars and Venus, 16th century engravings, frequently depict these deities as powerfully built, mirroring the giant traits found in older legends. Historical paintings, whether portraying Charlemagne, Antiochus, or other luminaries, artists routinely placed towering figures beside noticeably smaller companions, suggesting a stratification by height that modern accounts have glossed over. Civilization resets. The mud floods may be just one chapter in a far more complex story, a pattern of targeted resets that unfolded across different centuries and continents. These events weren't always natural. In fact, the deeper you look, the more intentional they begin to appear. Entire cities were buried, stone buildings melted down to unrecognizable forms, populations were decimated by sudden plagues or conflicts. History itself was rewritten. The result? A clean slate, removing the evidence of a former civilization and the giants who may have ruled it. Yet the scars left behind tell a darker story. The level of destruction, cities melted, histories erased, suggests these resets may have involved advanced technologies not native to our world. Some resets may have involved comet impacts or firestorms, others engineered diseases or staged wars. But the outcome is consistent: the systematic erasure of a lost world where giants mastered sound, energy, healing, and earth-aligned construction. These resets appear to have been part of a long-term effort to wipe out the giants and everything they knew. They likely marked the final blow to their legacy, clearing the way for us, the smaller humans, to move in and inherit the ruins. In the 1800s, the powers that be, certain secretive groups with deep ties to academia, publishing, and government, began reshaping the historical record in a very specific direction. Old books vanished from libraries. Entire archives and historical records were rewritten or erased. Fires swept through key cities, conveniently destroying ancient libraries, rare manuscripts, and priceless collections. Buildings that didn't fit the new timeline were rebranded, remodeled, or quietly demolished. This was not just historical editing. It was a coordinated knowledge reset, a deliberate manipulation of our understanding of the past, ensuring that the giants, their knowledge, and the energetic systems they left behind would be forgotten. Concluding thoughts. The evidence suggests giants once held a central role in shaping human history. These beings weren't rare outliers. They were leaders, builders, and carriers of forgotten knowledge, working with energy, resonance, and the natural forces of the earth. What we've inherited are only fragments, buried cities, rebranded cathedrals, and censored chronicles. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes. We didn't build this world from scratch. We inherited the ruins of a lost civilization that may have operated on entirely different principles. And as we move forward in this series, we'll step even deeper into the medieval and Renaissance giants, those who ruled, built, and vanished, but left behind clues carved in stone. Thank you for watching. If you found this thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. There's still so much more to uncover.